Hi everyone. So today we will go through the Unit 3 Biological Perspective for LSP501 Psychological Theories. Yeah. So first of all, what you should master after you go through the Unit 3. So by the end of Unit 3, you should be able to first identify the evolutions of human psychobiology in a historical context. Followed by the outline. You are able to outline and identify the organizations of humans and nervous system. And then you should able to describe the fundamental structure of our human being's brain, identify the functions of the brain in relation to humans' behavior, and then explore methodology used in understanding uh, humans' brain activities and functioning, and explain the aspects of brain which are responsible for emotion, memory, language, and also learning. So without any delay, let us go through the very first, which is understanding of what is the biological perspective. So how we actually define biological perspective, we normally explain it in a way as the field of psychology that applies bodily mechanism to understanding psychological functions and also behavior. So normally, we also call it as biopsychology or psychobiology. So it's a combination of two different fields of knowledge, which are first the biological and followed by psychology. So for biopsychology, views humans' behavior as affected by first the brain processes, genetic, as well as our hormonal changes. Yeah. So, quote one of the very well-known discovery that actually contribute to the biological perspective of psychology is happens in somewhere in 1920s, where a group of scientists actually have surgery on cats, okay, or other animals, okay, the living species. So what they did is they actually have a surgery procedure, remove the cerebral cortex retaining the hypothalamus, and then after that they did observation on the cat and the other living species in terms of their behavior, in terms of their emotions, etc. So what they actually discovered is one of the cat, after a removal of the cerebral cortex and retaining the hypothalamus, right? So when they sort of trigger the cat a little bit, but the cat's actually giving a very big reaction, okay, straying, okay, being very angry. Okay, so for this case study, we known as shamrage. So you can actually go to Google, okay, to study more about the history of this case study to understand more, okay, in terms of their results of observations and study what are the specific the regions of the brains has been removed. Okay, so you can did a self-study on that. So that is where the scientists actually assume that the brain, some part of the brain are actually control, responsible on the emotional management, okay, of the living species. Yeah. So part of that, there are a lots of similar study by removing different parts of brain, and then what are the changes that happens on the living species afterwards. Okay, so this is the some of the little history, the case study about biological perspective. So when we study about biological perspective, right, it's also important for us to go through some of the history where they are a few of the notable persons, they came out with very prominent concepts to explain about biological perspective of psychology. So for the very first person, we actually consider him as a founder, which is Charles Darwin. Yeah, Charles Darwin, he's very well known about his concepts of evolution and the natural selection. Yeah. So what he did is he did a lots of carefully observations of selective breeding. So what we call selective breeding. Selective breeding actually is like when we do breeding, right? When we mix breed or something, right? So we will actually extract the good characteristics or the good trait of the living species, and we try to retain by we ensure the good one, the good genes and the good traits will continue inherit by the next generations. And all these good characteristics and traits are supposed to provide the functions of helping the living species to live better or to be able to more adaptive to the environment. So, Charles Darwin, he conceptualized evolutions in terms of evolutions as the accumulations of advantages. So the keyword is advantages, characteristics in a species over time. So in terms of make sure the good traits and the good characteristics being inherited, right? So he came out a more specific terms called natural selection. So natural selection is known as the retention and the accumulation in species of characteristics that are more adaptive to the changing environment over time. So let me quote example. So let us take example of rats. Okay, well, in this world, we have the white rats, we have the black rats. So normally the black rats, they live better in the open environment because of the color of their hair is in black color. So it allows them to hide, to have the better hiding. Yeah, not easily be discovered. So that is why as compared to white rats, because white rats they are in white color and normally can be discovered, can be seen, right? So that is why you can see all the rats on the street hiding at the drains or whatever, the rubbish dump sites are in black color because they can survive better. Yeah. So the black color of the hair, this gene will continue inherit, okay, and continue to pass down to the next generation. Okay, so that to ensure the survival. Yeah. So if let's say happens on human being lah, we can actually observe why the whites or those people who stay in a cold country they have more hairs. Because supposedly having more hairs, you can keep yourself warm. Okay, so you can be more adaptive to the cold environment. Yeah, so for every characteristics that you can observe on different on people from different locations, different countries or different regions in the world, you know, the characteristics somehow in the past they carry a certain meaning and function for human survival. Yeah, so they have a lot of examples that you can see, a lot of what you call things that you can observe from different people. Okay, they're actually having a purpose on that. So this is actually what Charles Darwin means. Yeah. So we will carry the good traits and good genes and good characteristics from our ancestor for our better living adaptation to the environment. So this is a very first and fundamental, I can call it as fundamental logic you need to know for biological perspective of psychology by Charles Darwin. So the next one is by John Harlow. So John Harlow, he's well known of his case study on Finis gauge, where this case study is actually enabled him to identify the relation between the brain lesions and the behaviors, the changes of behaviors. So, based on the case study of Phineas Gage, who was actually used to be a common man and after that became a legendary in the field of neuroscience. So if you study about a biological perspective, or you are the people who are so into neuroscience, you should know about this case study. Yeah. So Gage, the key person of this case study, who used to be a blue collar railway construction foreman in US many years ago. So happens that he met an accident. He was injured when he was preparing the explosive charge in the borehole. So the explosion caused iron rod, okay, pass through the front of his skull. So you can actually view from the picture on your left hand side. Yeah, this picture with the skeleton with the skull one, you can see how the rod actually passed through the skull. Yeah. Somehow after he got saved by the doctors, he was he recovered from the injury with the minimal physical impairment. The physical impairment is because of during the emergency operations, the doctors need to remove some parts of the brain recent. Yeah. And he managed to survive. However, uh, the scientists and the doctors actually observed that there were dramatic changes in terms of his behavior. Yeah. Um, and some impairment on his physical function. Yeah. So suddenly he will lose consciousness, and sometimes he will behave very inappropriately in the public, such as being violent or swearing vulgarly. So in terms of the emotional regulation function somehow disrupted. Yeah. And especially after his operations, he actually become very violent. So what the scientists as well as the doctors like John Harlow assume that the changes in terms of his the incapability of the emotional regulations could be due to the removal of the brain lesions. Yeah. So for this case study, through this case study, actually taught us the importance of the brain function in influencing human behavior as well as personality. Yeah, so from this case study, we can actually see gauge personality, behavior, the emotional reactions have changed right after he recovered from the surgery. Yeah. So for more information, you can actually Google about this case study. There are quite a numbers of YouTube's which is about the documentary as well. We can actually watch up. Okay, watch it. So this is a very well-known case study uh, written by John Harlow. Yeah, so for Charles Darwin and John Harlow, actually, they are the quite early peoples in the biological perspective. So next, we will go through another two more person, which are more modern. Okay, the modern one. So the next is Jane Goodall. So she was very well known for her research on chimpanzee, where somewhere in July 1960, she went to a Gombe Stream reserve in Africa to study about chimpanzees, the how to say the way of living of chimpanzees in detail. Okay, so what she discovered is all these chimps, they have a very complicated, they have their own complicated social system where she can observe the chimps, they have their own identity and they have their own status. They're practicing the status hierarchies like human being in the social system. They also have some ritualized behavior like altruism behavior, grooming behavior, okay, among each other, among themselves. And also they were able to, learn to use some tools, okay, from their surrounding as for their protections purposes, things, etc. They're also practicing cooperative hunting and also infanticide. Yeah. So through regarding to all these chimps interactions, right? So chimpanzees develop the bonding like by touching, by stroking the backs of the other chimps. This one we actually call it as grooming behavior. And also they use stones, as a weapons to protect themselves. They have some ritualized behavior that actually, like let's say they are in an emergency, how they can actually notify the other teams, other subordinates, don't go to the dangerous places and things, etc. So all these portray in the society of chimps, okay, it's just as similar as human being. Yeah. So besides of that, she also observed chimps, they have their own family system, and each of the family system is composed of a dominant male, mature females, subordinate males, also juveniles. Yeah. So it's just living like a human being. So for her research, she sort of identified the similarity, like what I said just now, similarity between the chimp behavior and human culture. So there are a lot of documentaries on YouTube. You can actually search and click and watch. Yeah, is I think National Geographic actually covered quite a lot of her documentaries. Yeah. So another modern biopsychologist is Edward Wilson. So Edward Wilson initially was very interested in birds, yeah, but somehow because of an eye injury during his childhood, so and because of that, he suffered partial blindness and had the difficulties in the depth perception. So because of that, so he changed his interest of study to ants, yeah, to ants. So um through his observations of all the ants, and living species, right, he proposed the characteristics of organisms like altruisms evolve through the process of natural selection. So meaning that um from throughout his observations on different generations of ants, for example, some of all these ants from different generations, they portray the characteristics of altruism. Yeah, helping each other, backing up each other, things, etc. So again, he's adapting the concepts from Charles Darwin, the natural selection, where we learned just now, okay, refers to how genes are better adapted to the changing environment will pass down to the next generation. So besides that, he also discovered that ants, yeah, um, communicate through chemical substances. So that is why sometimes if you have accidentally killed ants, right? So you will smell some scent, okay, which could be quite unpleasant. Actually released by the dead body of the ants. Okay. This kind of scent, we consider as a chemical to communicate, to sending the message to other subordinate ants to convey the message that, I'm in danger. Please don't come near to this location. Yeah, there's a danger object here. So that is why the ants after that they will escape. They don't dare to come near to the scene. Okay. Um, So that is how he assumed that every organism has specific ways to communicate. I suppose that a lot of living species, they somehow will release a kind of pheromones, yeah, pheromones to attract or to sending message to other in-group members, yeah, uh, something like that. So I suppose that for human being, we also carry some pheromone, yeah, pheromone by uh, our bodily functions, we have carry that kind of sense, get attract or to get rid from the people. Yeah, so this is a discovery by Edward Wilson. So we have gone through the four main persons, the main notable persons in biological perspective. The first one is Charles Darwin, where he introduced natural selection through observations on plants and animals. Yeah, followed by John Harlow, who emphasized the function of the brain in human behavior through the case study. And then we also go through the modern scientists, the Jane Goodall, who discovered that chimpanzees' behavior is quite similar to human being, and Wilson research on ant. He identified organisms may communicate through chemical transmission. Yeah. So all these are actually contribute to the publications of psychological foundations of culture, marks the beginnings of evolution psychology. Yeah. Okay. So after we know about these four persons, how we understand how biological psychology develop, evolve. So now we go through the key assumptions. So what are the key assumptions that we could observe from the past works by the biopsychologists? Okay, so these are the four things that you need to remember. Yeah, so for the very first key assumption is we can actually observe, right, all the scientists, all the biopsychologists, they have adopted the scientific ways in studying psychology. So scientific ways means they use a systematic observation. Yeah, so from just now, from the four notable persons, right, you can see they mainly adopting observation method when they conduct their study. Yeah, so they do observations, they record down what they have observed, and they have the scientific explanations on that. So please remember, normally for a biological perspective, they use very systematic ways to study psychology. Yeah. So the next one is behavior. Okay, behavior is influenced by biological factors. So quote one of the example just now by the John Harlow on the gauge case. After the removal of certain parts of gauge from the gauge brain, so they observe there are some behavior changes. So from that case study, we assume that there's how we behave, how we feel, how we react, how we think is uh affected by, for example, like for example, like the functions of the brain. So our brain, every part of our brain will carry a specific functions. Yeah, so anything happens, impair the parts will affect our bodily function, including our behavior. Yeah, so behavior evolve through time. So for example, like what we can observe, like from Jane Goodall, the chimpanzee. Yes, they slowly they adapt, they learn, they showing the adaptive behavior to ensure their survival. Yeah, so we also have some behavior that actually will continue evolve as time goes by. So all these evolutions are aimed to help the living species to be more adaptive to the environment. So that is why the behavior supposedly will be evolved through time. So lastly, must include animal studies in understanding human behavior. So like what we can see from the early works from them, they use a lot of different animals as their targeted observations object, like chimpanzees lah, animals, ants, even human being. Okay, but for informations for biological perspective, right? Why they actually uh, prefer to use animals as a observation object is because as compared to human being, the animals have shortened lifespan since from the day one they born until the end of their life. So they have shorter lifespan. So scientists, they can have chance to spend lesser time to do the observation. And after that, they will apply what they have observed to explain about human being. So that is why you will see why living species, like especially on rats, okay, the white rats in the lab, the monkeys, dogs, cats, they are being used as the observations object. If you learn about, even when you learn about behavioralisms, where the child, the who you, Ivan Pavlov lah, Evan Thorndike lah, or they use animals as as observation object. Yeah. So after that, similarly, they also use what they have observed to explain about human beings' behavior. So these are the key assumptions that you can actually, you have to know about biological perspective. Yeah. So after we learn about the key assumptions, we know about the historical context of biological perspective. So let us now go to the basic functions of brain, our human brain, and how it actually related to our personality, our behavior, our emotion regulations, etc. Yeah. So from the fundamental um, parts of our brains, especially our body, are actually make from a large amount of neurons and nerves. Yeah. So for humans, we have three types of neurons and two types of nerves. And they are very essential for our bodily function. Include for to enable us to carry our life, okay, and also for our survival needs. Yeah. So there are three types of neurons. First of all, the first one is sensory, followed by relay, and also motor neurons. So normally for all these three types of neurons, they can be found in peripheral nervous system and also our central nervous system. So from here, you also additionally know about, we have two nervous system. So we have two types of nerves. The first one is sensory nerve, followed by motor nerves, which can be found in the peripheral nervous system. Okay, so overall, all these neurons, they function to conduct nerves impulses, while the nerves function they were used to transmit the information to various parts of our body. Okay, so now we first go to the sensory neuron. Yeah. So sensory neuron, they're also known as afferent neurons, and they are mostly located in sensory organs. So sensory organs are our human body, such as our ears, our eyes, our tongues, and our skin. So all these organs are supposedly to receive sensation, to sense the sensation. Yeah. And all these neurons, they will carry the sensory informations from the body, which is from our organs, okay, through to our spinal cord and go to our brain. So for informations for brain, we also call our brain as a central nervous system. The keyword is central. Yeah. Now, so before I go to explain the function and the characteristics of the sensory relay and motor neurons. So first of all, we should learn about all these basic function of the parts that we can actually see from all these neurons. Okay. So first of all, you will need to understand our neurons must have nucleus. So every neuron will definitely have one nucleus. So nucleus responsible by carry all the genetic material of the cell. Yeah. So it's something like the brain of the neuron. Yeah. So we carry all the genetics informations, or we call it as chromosomes. Okay. So I will call it as the brain of the neuron. Yeah. And the next thing that you should know is all the cell body. We call it as soma as well. So all the cell body or soma, they will surround the nucleus and other smaller structure of the neuron. So it provides the supports and the structure of the neuron. Yeah. And then next one is the dendrites. So dendrites are the branches from the soma. Okay, the branches. So it looks like a tree branches of the tree. So they are normally short and numerous. Numerous means they are very, very, how to say, if we have trees, right? We have all the branches, right? It's very heavy kind of branches. There are lots. So the dendrites are responsible to receive the nerves impulses from other neuron. So it's something like a receiver, the receiver station. And then the next one is axon. So axon is an extended part from the cell body. So the nucleus, after that, they will extend. So they have the axon. So the axon responsible to convey the impulses generated by the soma away from the soma. So it's something like, the cable, okay, the cable with the rubber protection. So this one is axon. Yeah. Okay. And after that, axon, right, is covered by the myelin sheet. The myelin. The myelin sheet is made up from the fat, a kind of fats, okay, the fatty layer. So it's something like what I say, when you have the cable, right, okay, that is the outer layer is actually protected by the rubbers, okay. So the myelin actually is the rubbers, yeah, to ensure. Okay lah, make it more common sense. It's like to make sure everything is wrapped and there is no information leak lah. Okay, as a joke. Okay, I will call it in this way. I remember in this way. And after that, the final structure of the neuron have the synapse. So synapse is a space in between the terminal button and the dendrites of another neuron. So okay, so the subsequent slides, we will see all these parts in image. Okay. Okay, so the very first, we will start with the sensory neuron. So how does the sensory neuron work? We work in the nervous system here. So you can see this is how the dendrites look like. Okay, so when we can see the cell body, which is a nucleus, we have the axon, we have the axon terminal. This is where the synapse will be located here. Okay, so when the sensory information reach the brain, right? So the impulses that carry the sensory information will be transformed into sensation, such as touching, hearing, visions, proprioceptions, and taste. Yeah. So the sensory neurons carry the functions like transmitting okay, the sensory information. So that is why the humans will respond. Humans will respond when they receive stimuli from the external environment. So this is an important part that allow us to sense something. Okay, and then so once we have the sensory neurons that located on our all the functions, I mean bodily functions like skins lah, our eyes, nose, tongues, our nose, yeah. So they will start transmitting, yeah, they're sending out the info. They will start to sense and send information, right? So they will go through the second types of neuron. We call it as relay, or we also call it as interneuron or associative neuron as well. So this kind of neuron is located in between the sensory input and the motor output. So please remember the sensory neurons is responsible for our input, and we have the motor neurons responsible for output. Yeah. So predominantly in the brain and spinal cord. So we can see normally relay neurons are located in the brain and as well as our spinal cord here. So it functions is to allow the communications between the sensory neurons and the motor neuron. So you can see this is how the relay neurons looks like. Okay, it's quite a little bit, it's quite different from the sensory, where you can see the patterns of the dendrites are quite different. The location of cell body is quite different. Yeah. And then after that, the third type of neuron, we call it as motor neuron, or also name it as efference neuron. Yeah. So for this, it functions is to transfer the motor informations from the brain and spinal cord to the muscle. So after we receive the information from our motor neurons, then we will start to do reaction. Okay. So you can also see the structure also quite quite different from relay motors. Yeah. So where we have the dendrites here, and the cell body is actually linked. This is the beginning started of the dendrites. Okay, the dendrites actually linked to the cell body, which is the nucleus. So some people might confuse because it looks a little bit like sensory neuron, but please remember the cell body, the location is quite different. Okay, so the information sent to the motor neurons, the dendrite receive it, and then after that, it will slowly transmit from the dendrites, okay, cell body, go down through axon, go to our axon terminal. So the synapse will happen there. Yeah. So these are the in conclusion, this is how this is a comparisons between the motor, relay, and sensory neurons, how they looks like lah, huh? Okay. So this is overall the structure of neuron in general. Okay, so when you search Google, when you type out neurons, so this is how it generally looks like. Yeah. Okay. So just now we mentioned about the very important terms called synapse. So synapse, what is synapse mean? Yeah. And it's actually explained about the process where there is a electric signal transmission process happens from one neuron to another neuron. Yeah. So just now, for your information, synapse will happens in the third axon terminal. Okay, axon terminal. Okay, so the nerve fiber ending of the axon, yeah, you can see on axon, will form the synapse with another neuron and the muscle cell, so that the neurotransmitter can pass from one neuron to another neuron. So in between one neuron, another neuron, in between there's a gap. So that is where all the so-called the quote layman terms, we call electrical shock will happen. So when the electrical shock will happen, right, information they will pass from here to another side. Yeah. Okay. So in the presynaptic terminal, there are synaptic vesicles which are filled with neurotransmitter. Yeah, so the neurotransmitter is actually a kind of chemical. Okay, the like what Edward Wilson say, the chemical for communications, the transmissions of communication, but it happens in humans, huh? So where there is a gap between the presynaptic terminal and postsynaptic cell, so the gap is known as synaptic clefts. So you can see from the picture. So we have the presynaptic cell here. Okay, and the presynaptic cell, they will carry all the neurotransmitter. So the neurotransmitter after that will release, okay, will pass through the synaptic clefts to another cell, okay, the postsynaptic cell. Like what I mentioned just now, is something like the electric signal. So it's something like the electrical shock. You have the opener, you have the terminal to receive the neurotransmitter. Yeah, so this is how the information is being transmitted between neurons and another neurons in our body. So it's very important. Yeah. So that is why for my opinions lah, so there are some people when we take all the pills, all the medicines that we taking, they actually carry the functions to is either they enhance the release of neurotransmitter or they suppress the release of neurotransmitter. Yeah. There are a lot of psychotics medication, like those medications to treat depression, to treat all the bipolar disorder, anxiety attacks, all these things. It actually play on the functions to suppress or release the neurotransmitter. Yeah, so that they have a lot of informations pass through or through the axon and through the neuron. Yeah, so this is how it works. Okay, so in the previous slide, before we talk about neurons, yeah. So basically, in our human's nervous system, we have the very basic fundamentals, small parts built from neurons and nerves. So all these neurons and nerves we will observe in, like just now what I mentioned, we will see them in central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. So for central nervous system, we will start from here first. So please remember for CNS, the central nervous system consists of two main parts. The first one is our brain. The second one is our spinal cord. Yeah. And then after that, we will go through the peripheral nervous system. Yeah, where we will touch on autonomic and somatic. And after that, we have the sympathetic and parasympathetic. So we start from the CNS first. Yeah. Okay, so for the CNS, like what I mentioned just now, consists of the brain and our spinal cord. So it means the main function of CNS is to integrate the sensory informations and provide responses. So you can see our brain with our spinal cord, and after that we have all the peripheral nervous system consists of all the sensory and motor nerves. Yeah, so the CNS is highlighted in red color. Okay, so for our brain will play a role as a control system by receiving the stimuli from the external environment. And after that, the informations go to our brain. Our brain will start to do the interpretation, interpreting the stimuli received, and after that to decide what kind of response to be given. Yeah. So the informations after that, the response, okay, will direct the impulses to the body and our body muscles and organs. So for examples, when we are under stress, okay, we will feel our butterfly in our tummy, our heartbeat will get very fast, we'll start to have sweating, we'll start to sweat, we'll feel hungry, we'll feel our muscle trembling. All these are actually the informations, the responses decided by our brain and sent to our organs. So our organs will experience all the reaction. Yeah. Okay, so the brain also helps in the homeostasis. Okay, homeostasis is aimed to maintains the balance of our bodily system, like for example, the control of temperature, the blood glucose level, and also our blood pressure. Okay, and all these functions are mediating by our hormones. Okay, um, so after that, for a second part of our central nervous system is our spinal cord. So our spinal cord is an extension from our brain here, okay, called brainstem, and slowly extend to our back side, okay, our back. Okay, so the connection, it serves as a connection of our brain to other parts and of our body is through our spinal cord. So the spinal cord, it's extend from our brain, go to our backside, yeah, it connect to all the organs, okay, which carry the signal back and forth from the brain and to other parts of our body. So you have to ensure that your spinal cord, you have to protect your spinal cord. If something happens to your spinal cord, the informations cannot send through the spinal cord. So basically the particular parts of the organs and the functions will be impaired. Yeah, so that is why you will see uh, uh, like people when there are some people when they met accidents and hurt their spinal cord, they cannot walk, they cannot move, or they cannot sense particular things, or they cannot control their bowel, they cannot control their urinating system, or all these things. Yeah, because of the blockage or the damage of the pathway, okay, of the informations from the organ sent through the spinal cord to the brain. Something broke or damaged. Okay. So for our central neurons, central nervous system, which is the main parts, which is our brain. So all these are actually the major divisions and substructure that we can see from our brain. So we have our forebrain. So our forebrain here, we have cerebral cortex. Yeah, cerebral cortex, right? Um, it's mainly function helping us in problem solving and decision making. And we have the frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, and temporal lobe. So different lobes, they will carry different function. So quote, we can recall back what happened to Philip Cage in the John Harlow's case study. Yeah, because of the damage on the certain brain lesion. Yeah, so that is why he lost of control in terms of emotional regulation. Yeah, so it could be something, something impact in particular lobe that carry that function. Yeah, responsible for emotions regulation. So for all these lobe, you can actually see like frontal lobe, responsible for reasoning, cognitive cognition, the higher level one, the language and movement, and parietal lobe integrates the sensory information like pain, pressure, touch, temperature. Responsible for visual information is responsible by occipital lobe, and the temporal lobes responsible in processing auditory information. So besides that, we also have the basal ganglia, regulate the voluntary movement and cognition. We have amygdala. Amygdala is responsible for all the autonomic and endocrine responses. So for the hormones release, all these things are actually related to amygdala. Yeah. And amygdala is very important for human survival state. Okay, it's helping us to create the fear feeling, to sense the fear feelings, and we will start to run away or something. This is for the basic functions of human survival. Yeah, and we also have the thalamus, transfer the information from our sensory receptor to appropriate parts of our brain. So when you study about stress response, the fundamental parts that you should understand when you study about human stress will be the amygdala and thalamus. Yeah, these two parts are very important. And we also have all the hypothalamus is maintaining the homeostasis. So when we feel thirsty or we feel very cold, our hypothalamus will start functioning to trigger us to do something, okay, to keep us warm, to keep us hydrate, yeah, dehydrate. We also have hippocampus convert. Is hippocampus is very important for memory storage, yeah. So if let's say you hurt your hippocampus, so you might suffer some memory issues, yeah. So we also have the pituitary gland. So pituitary gland is to produce hormones and control the other endocrine system in the productions of hormone. Okay, so these are the major parts that you should know, okay, for our brain. We also have midbrain. So midbrain is we have the inferior and superior colloquially. So this is serve as a relay system to handle a different kind of sensory stimuli from our auditory and visual. We also have a hindbrain. So hindbrain, we have the cerebellum, okay, medulla oblongata, and pons. So all these are mostly responsible on our involuntary function. Is more related to the A and S, the autonomic nervous system processes. Yeah. So please remember, any injuries happens in particular parts of all this, okay, will affects our bodily function. Yeah. Okay. So these are the brain parts. So now we go to spinal cord. So spinal cord is like what I say, is actually start from here to until our backside. Okay. So the spinal cord, as you can see from the picture, the very first image on top here on your right hand side is something like this. So for our spinal cord, we have different sections we will go through later. And the structure of the spinal cord, it will looks like a very long fragile cylinder extend for our brain stem until bottom of our spine. So it's divided from few segments like what I said just now, and they have two roots. Yeah, one is the dorsal root, another one is ventral. So dorsal is towards the back, and ventral is away from back. Okay, so the dorsal is actually comes in, the ventral actually go out. Yeah, so from the second picture that you can see, okay, on your right hand side, the second picture, this is, you can see the dorsal horn and the vertical roots, dorsal roots and vertical roots. Yeah, so this is where the nerves will comes in and go out. Okay, it responsible by sending message and output the message. Okay. Okay, so the spinal cord carry the three main function. The very first is for the electrical transmission, followed by locomotion and reflexes. Yeah. And then the spinal cord, they have two segments. Yeah, the first segment is about white matter and then followed by gray matter. So the gray matter is made up of cell body and dendrites, okay, and have a shape resembling the butterfly. So you can see that is a small little butterfly. Okay, let us go to the previous slide. It's like the purple color one, you can see it's like a butterfly shape. Yeah, so it's refer to the gray matter. So the white matter is made up of nerve fiber that's surrounding the gray matter. Okay, it's something like also play as a role to provide the protections, because for the gray matter actually they have a lot of all the sensitive nerves inside. Okay, the dendrites. Yeah. Okay. So this is normally when you go to clinics or the hospitals, when you go to all the orthopedics kind of specialists, you can see all the spinal the simulations tooth, right? So we have the bones, okay, we have the bones, and then the yellow matter is actually the spinal cord. So anything happens, it have, let's say when your bones is suppressed on the spinal cord, then you will cause the informations pathway blockage, okay, so the informations cannot send. So when the informations cannot send means your body will go mess, yeah. So this is how the spinal cord looks like. Okay. Okay, so now we look at the overall structure of our spinal nerves. Yeah. So from the picture, you can actually observe, you can actually see our brains here, and we have the spinal cord from our brain here. Okay, slowly go down to our tailbone. Okay, our backside. Okay. Um, so along the line here, we have the different parts, the section of our nerves group, okay, in the spinal. So we have the cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacra, and coccygear. Okay, so each of the nerves group we have the different numbers of spinal nerves here. Yeah, so we have 8, 12, 5, 5, 1. Yeah, and it located at different parts of our body here. So you can see like our neck, chest, abdomen, pelvis, and tailbone. So all these nerves will connect to our different parts of our body, including our head, neck, upper body, arms, hands, muscles, knees, hips, leg, toes, bladder, inner muscles, etc. So that is why I'm not sure about the others of you. For our Chinese, right? Our Chinese will normally will say, um, if let's say your spinal somehow out of certain alignment here, your neck is out of alignment, or your back uh, pain due to out of alignments, and somehow the your spinal nerves has been pressed, okay, because it's out of alignment, right? So the bone or somehow and other structure will press on your nerves, and you will experience some discomfort. This is a mild version right now. You will experience a discomfort on your body parts, like you will feel neck very tight, your head, okay, very tight. Your hands will numb all the time. You will feel your legs do not have any strength, or it will affect some parts of the body. Okay, so that is why there are some people, they will say you will need to go for chiropractics or TCMs to do realignments. Okay, so that you will feel better. You will make sure you will make sure the spinal cord are aligned back, and your pains or discomfort will be lesser. Okay, that is because like what I assume is when everything align back to normal, the information's pathway smooth. Okay, so once the information's pathway smooth already, then you will feel better. This is for TCM or Chinese perspective. Yeah, so please correct me if I'm wrong. So this is what I experienced lah. Okay, because like for us, we sitting in the office or having incorrect gesture all the time. So somehow I did experience some spinal cord misaligned, and I go for chiropractic, and after that I feel better. Yeah, so this is my assumption. Okay. So um the spinal cords, the spinal nerves, they are very, very important for the functions of reflexes. Yeah, so a reflex is defined as a simple or the automatic response or a learned response. Yeah, so reflexes is happen unconsciously and without any effort one. Yeah, it's it could be our natural inborn instruction. Yeah, okay, like you don't have to learn. Okay, you don't have to learn, but reflexes, some of the reflexes are very important for our human survival. For example, when we touch on the hot surface things, then we will withdraw our hands. When we see something very, very dangerous, object, then we will have a fight and flight reaction, and we start to move. Okay. Okay, so this how the pictures that you can see from your slide is illustrate how the reflex process will happen. So everything actually start from receptor. So receptor were responsible to receive the stimuli by producing the electrical signal. Yeah, like the synapse happens in the synapse that we learned in the previous section of our lecture today. And after that, it will go through the afferent pathway. So the afferent pathway will transmit the electrical signal to the integrating central, which is our central nervous system. And after that, our central nervous system will start to process the signal, and after that, they will decode the response. So the informations will send through our afferent pathway, transmit the response to a specific muscle, to our part of our rest of body. So our muscles maybe by the time they will start to strain, okay, and prepare us to react. Yeah, so we have the efferent organs carry out the desired response, such as, for example, move away our hands from the hot cups. So this is the simple mechanisms and simple illustrations of how reflexes happen. Yeah, the process will happen. Okay, so just now we go through the central nervous system, which is consists of our brain and our spinal cord. So now we go through our peripheral nervous system. So peripheral nervous system it's consists of autonomic nervous system and somatic. And under autonomic nervous system, it's crucial for us to know the sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. Okay, so first of all, we go down to the second level, which is understanding on autonomic and somatic first. So for somatic, the main function is to carry sensory and motor signal to and from our CNS. Yeah, so there are two main parts or main types of the neuron in this system we have learned just now, which is sensory and motor. Yeah, somatic. And then the autonomic nervous system is more complicated in the sense that it is responsible for our involuntary functioning of human being. Like for example, our digestive system, breathing, blood flow, and also our heartbeat. So all these things, the process will constantly happens without your knowing, right? So you breathe naturally, okay, you don't control when you're hungry, right? So your what you call, you will only when you will know you are hungry when you feel something in your stomach. Yeah, your heartbeat you cannot control. Yeah, and all these things is connected to the involuntary organs in the body, such as especially our cardiac muscle. So our cardiac muscle is something to do with our heart. Yeah. Okay, so this is the two main systems, somatic and autonomic. And then uh, under autonomic nervous system, these are the two systems that you need to understand, because these two systems will help to regulate our physiological arousal. Yeah. So the very first one is sympathetic. So sympathetic nervous system will actually help us prepare us for the fight or flight responses. Okay, by which the body will prepare to enhance the energy. So sympathetic will actually make our body to start, okay, use out the energy, to build up the energy in order to react to the stressor from the external environment. So it's either we fight, okay, or we run away. Okay, so the neuron of this sympathetic nervous system, they consist of the uh, preganglionic neuron, that can actually excite our nerve fiber, and that is why it makes us uh will be more easily to be responsive to the trait, to the external environment. So sympathetic uh nervous system is very simple. When we are enter into this mode, our body will start to build out the energy. The energy will supply to our body, especially our muscle, and we will start to react to the external trait, any stressor from the environment that make us feel threatening or uncomfortable. Yeah. And then meanwhile, for the other one, the parasympathetic system, uh, it works the opposite way of sympathetic. Yeah. So the parasympathetic nervous system is to help us to conserve bodily energy by helping us to do the regulation so that we will return to the normal level after the emergency. So for the homeostasis process what happens during parasympathetic uh, uh, parasympathetic system. Yeah. So after we fight or flight already, we use out the energy already, right? So when we body move to the parasympathetic system, so this system will allow us to will start digesting, start to, how to say, store energy. Yeah, start to regain our energy for the next time use. Yeah, so sympathetic and parasympathetic is very important, especially when you study about stress. Yeah, we have to learn how these two systems works together. Okay, so these are the basics of um our bodily function. Yeah, and I think it's quite sufficient for you to know, at least for biological perspective. So these are the systems that we will focus on to study. And from here, all this knowledge or all these bodily functions, then we're trying to observe maybe under certain situations or under certain phenomena, how our bodily system change and regulate in responding to the phenomena or situation. Yeah. So this is actually the process. It also include in the process to study about psychology. Okay. Um, so for all these bodily functions are so crucial because it serves as an indicator and serve as a parameter to measure how our humans' bodily functions change, right? So of course we need tools, we need some apparatus to identify, to check, to identify, to observe the changes happens our body internally. So these are the methods are commonly used in the biological uh, biopsychology studies. Okay, so for the first one, as we touched on before, uh, most of the time we can see the scientists, the psychologists, they use animals as their main observations method, testing object. Yeah. And we also have some case study. So normally um, for case study, we will do observations. Okay. You can actually see from like Edwards. You can actually see from Jane Goodall. You can actually see on John Harlow. They pick the special case. Okay, and they study on them. Yeah. So from there, they're trying to um, explain. They bring the concept to explain, to generalize to other human being or other living species. Okay, so these are case study method. We also have drug research. So drug research, for example, like recently we just went through the COVID-19 pandemic, the coronavirus attack. Then in order to come up with all the vaccines, in order to come up with the medications, we actually need to do some testing first. So we want to know how the particular content of the vaccines or the medications, how it can actually create impact or effect on the bodily function. So of course, normally for drug research, they will also involve animals as their object of testing, like rats, monkeys, cats, dogs, etc. Yeah. So okay, so another one which is quite calm is I would say when we talk about biological perspective, we will link this perspective to this particular study. We call it as twin or family study. So from the picture, actually, you can see they are the two bald men, okay, sitting down. It's actually one of the in quite a well-known study. They are from NASA, US, and they undergoes longitudinal study, the observation one, okay, and to see their intelligence testing, all the genetic, uh, to observe their genetic characteristics, whether is it twins, especially identical twins, whether they share the same genes, when they are being raised in different families. So what are the changes happen? Is it something, if, for example, like if let's say some of uh, uh, the measurement, like their intelligence level, their personality characteristics, whether will change when they're being raised out in different family, even though they are identical twins. So we want to identify, is the gene responsible for intelligence, or the environment will actually contribute to the intelligence level or personality of formation. Yeah. So you can actually Google to search more informations on twin and family study. Yeah. We Or you can type twin and adoption study. Yeah. Okay, so we also biopsychology, right? They also somehow involve using neurosurgery. So like for example, like just now, the case study by uh, the John Harlow on the cage, the person is actually parked under neurosurgery. Yeah, when they have uh, they observe, okay, they do observations after they remove the certain parts, the certain lesions of the um of the brain. Yeah. So we also have brain scanning. So for brain scanning, for example, we have EEG, we have the PET, and we have the MRI. So for EEG, as you can see, the picture on the drawing one with all the small little notes, okay, hat, where. So this one is actually by the person, actually is to uh record the brain wave, okay, movement when they are doing certain tasks. Like for example, like previously my experience, I wear these EG kind of things, okay, and to study to record my brainwave movement when I'm playing video games. Yeah. So actually the study is about uh the brain activity when we play and when we perform certain tasks. Yeah. So we do have this kind of um what you call this kind of apparatus to study about brainwave. And also we have the PET. So PET is actually, you can see the picture from the last picture when we see the normal Parkinson's, So the PET actually to record the what you call the function, okay, of the particular regions of the brain, the activity, which one is more active, which one is at the rest stage, okay, when we perform certain tasks. So normally for PET, they are quite commonly used to on those Parkinson's dementia kind of patient, where they want to understand when they do research to understand what are the differences between the normal person's brain and the Parkinson's brain, okay, activity when they perform a certain task. Yeah. And the MRI is very straightforward. MRI nowadays also quite widely used in medical field, where they will put the persons into a tube. Okay, it's like a space kind of tube, and then go in, and then after that they will use magnetic kind of what you call magnetic kind of tools to see, okay, to how to say, take the photos of the nerves, the brains, okay, to see if there is any growth or whatever of any abnormal activities, okay, blockage or whatever happens in the body. Okay, so we have all these different types of methods and tools and apparatus to be used when we study about biopsychology. Okay, so this is our come to the end of our lesson. Yeah, so um, what are, what are the strengths and why we should actually consider on biological perspective when we study about psychology? Yeah. So the very first one, of course, biological perspective, the way they conduct the experiments, the way they conduct the research, the method are quite scientific. Yeah, it's quite scientific and systematic. So that is why they are assumed to have the systematic way, the scientific ways to explain about human behavior, because they are able to show the evidence, you see. Everything is support by evidence. So most of the behavior carried out by humans are related to the brain, hormones, and neurotransmitter. They can actually provide evidence to show you that. Yeah. So this is the first strength they are able to provide. And the second one is they able to provide a rational explanations for those unexplainable behavior. Okay, so for example, like evolutionary theory, especially proposed by Charles Darwin, they enable all those biologists to explain the changes in behavior through time. Yeah, and also because they have a lot of assumptions that how our genetics, how our um, bodily function changes, evolutions, um, uh, evolve, okay, and how it they can actually using these assumptions to explain, okay, explain why, those characteristics, are essential and assumed to be useful. So allow the living species they are able to be more adaptive, okay, to the environment. Okay, and we also can observe um, how all the good genes and good characteristics, a good trait can be passed down, okay, through the generations. So these are the two main strengths that we can find in biological perspective, okay, of psychology. But of course, this perspective is not the so-called the perfect one to explain about psychology, because first it failed to account the other influences of behavior, because they are very focused on the biological changes, the functions, the aspects of human being and how it causes changes, okay, on human. And they are too focused, okay, and they somehow not considering or not taken account, like for example, the other environmental influences or some childhood experience or some social pressure and cultural influences. They are unable to take, they so-called not taking all these other factors into the consideration. Okay. And lastly, they fail to explain why they are failed to explain some behaviors or states. Uh, for example, they observe there are some patterns of behavior. For example, like altruism exists, okay, in humans in animals, right? They can see there's a patterns there, but they are unable to explain which function of the brain and body to actually um, trigger the altruism, yeah, to help others at the personal cost. They unable to explain that. They acknowledge there is something, the patterns there, but they cannot figure out how it actually linked to our body and brain, yeah, function. So these are the gaps that the biological perspective, they so far they are still unable to identify and answer. Yeah. So these are the two limitations that we can see from the biopsychology. Okay, so that's all for the content for this unit. So again, if you want to study in depth, please refer to your course material. Yeah, for today's is just the overview, okay, on the particular sections in this unit. So I hope you guys can spend some time to do at least some external research like what I have recommended just now, to go through some, to search YouTube's videos on the documentaries, or Google some of the terms to study it further. Yeah. So thank you very much for watching this lecture. Yeah. Thank you very much. Hope to see you guys again. Okay, bye everyone.